Hello and welcome back to Experian Talks Domestic and Economic Abuse. And again, joined by Anthony from PayPlan. Thanks for joining the second. If you didn't see the first part of the video, Anthony does a great job of talking us through what economic and financial abuse is and some of the support that PayPlan can give you. Now, what we're going to do is jump on in this second part of the series to talk about really some of the support you can get. And even if you know anyone in this scenario, or if you're in this situation, really some of the things that you can do to help yourself. Because I think probably, Anthony, you'll agree with me, is what we don't want is people living for many years with the financial impact of being a victim of domestic abuse. And I think there's lots of help for you. So we'll just really jump right in and we'll start talking about some of that. And Anthony, thanks again for joining. So I'm going to jump right in and just put you on the spot really to talk about what PayPlan can do, and maybe a bit about the journey around how to get support through you if they came directly, or whether they're referred through a charity, and some of the help. And just maybe if you can kind of just walk someone through what that help journey looks like. And, although you'll never know an outcome, but maybe something around, how that looks at the end.
Of course. Yeah. Yes. Really, how somebody comes to us is absolutely down to the way that someone wants to interact with us, how they feel comfortable. So they can absolutely come to us directly. They can interact with us over the phone, over digital routes, but also through a referral through someone like Refuge or another domestic abuse charity. And I guess there are benefits of working in different ways. So if you're referred through from someone like Refuge, the one thing that will give you is specialism with regards to the domestic abuse and the help that's available there. And absolutely, we often will work in harmony with that organisation and almost make sure that we're linking into those services. And if somebody needs to be walked through that step by step, then that's absolutely what we can do in relation to that organisation. The first thing to say is that we are here to support. So if anybody wants to come to us, you're going to be working with someone who understands what you've been through, is respective of how you want to work with us, and who is also ensuring that they tailor the way that we work with you. One thing that we really want to say is that every single person that comes to us is different. We are not here to just follow a process. We're here to understand what you need from us and to take that at your pace. So the other thing that we absolutely know is that some people want to do something quickly. They want to move forward, and we can offer that. If you want to call us today, we're here to help you today. On the other side, if somebody needs, they might need to take it at a different pace. They might want to do a little bit today and come back to it tomorrow, and then do a little bit more next week. And that is absolutely fine with us. So it's absolutely led by the individual that we're working with. For us, what we want to do is, through that journey, however quickly or slowly you want to take that, it's us understanding what the situation is for you, understanding what your circumstances are now, but also later, because we do understand that some people's circumstances are quite in a state of flux, and might be somebody might be in temporary housing or a refuge. They might be looking for employment. They might be understanding what benefits they're entitled to. They might be seeking a more long-term form of housing. And so what we want to really understand is what the situation is now, but also giving lots of flexibility for that to change in the future. And that's something that we'll look at when we understand the solutions that we can consider when it's dealing with the debts that they have. The other thing as well is that there are lots of things that we can do at PayPlan to deal with debts that have been taken out against somebody's will, whether there may be economic abuse and there's a debt that exists because of that. For example, there are debt solutions that could work for somebody that wants to look at that, but for somebody else, it may be something like debt write-off that we're considering. And one of the things that we've been doing more recently is we have been working with surviving economic abuse that you referred to earlier. And we're really proud to say that we've been selected to be part of a project, a pilot that they've been working on something called the Economic Abuse Evidence Form, which is a method for us to work with lenders that are in that pilot to help to to make it easy for them to understand what the client's circumstances are and what they've been through. And that can really help with debt write-off. And we're already seeing some fantastic results from that as well.
Great. So, okay. So here's what I'm going to take away from this, which is absolutely whatever your journey is right now, or, you know, if you're part way through that journey, if you're coming out the other end, but whatever your circumstances are, they're usually different, but you're going to kind of get that tailored support if you go through, whether you come through PayPlans, you know, individually or directly, sorry, or whether you come through a charity like Refuge, you're going to kind of get a tailored support really built around your circumstances. Okay, that's perfect. That's great. So I thought there's some really good points about kind of the debt help journey, which is great. And I think, you know, if you're coming out of this situation where you've been a victim of economic abuse, there is a financial impact. So you've kind of spoken a bit about the journey you go through. So I thought it might be good to talk about a journey through a credit reference agency, because if you didn't go to PayPlan, of course, why wouldn't you? But if you come to a credit reference agency, I think it's a really important kind of point to make around the long-term impact of your economic abuse, which is that there could be debts on your credit report which don't necessarily need to be there. And this is always what I found is a really important point, which is if someone opens credit in your name without your knowledge, then that's a fraudulent account. And if you come to Experian or a credit reference agency, we have a wonderful fraud team here who can dispute that for you. And you can tell us the story just once, and we'll go off to any lenders that you've told us about and dispute that information is fraudulent, get them to investigate it. And here, really, that information should be removed from your credit report, kind of set you back to where you should be without those accounts. But what we also know is there's lots of other accounts on your credit report which actually aren't quite so black and white. And we're talking about accounts where maybe you've been coerced to open them, so forced to open an agreement, even could be a joint agreement. And those accounts, we can still follow a dispute process for and dispute them with the lender and go off and say, okay, it should be investigated because you were forced to open this account. And, you know, we want the ideal scenario there is that hopefully the lender can come to some agreement or maybe even remove the debt from your credit report. It gets a little bit tricky where it's joint accounts as well. And also you might have accounts where you've added someone as an additional card holder and they're using your credit card or so on. So, you know, these can be investigated. What I would say in that scenario, by the way, is shut that off as soon as you can. So contact your lender and shut off that card as long as you're in a safe position to do so. But Anthony, you talked a little bit around the support that you get. And some of the things that I'm thinking about here around the safety aspect, because you talked about someone who might be in a refuge or a hostel temporary accommodation, or also they might still be in the home environment. So there's a quite strong element of safety here. And I'm just wondering if you can talk us through a little bit around that kind of e-safety bit, because there's lots of bits around joint accounts that you might have. There's lots of bits around if you've got online banking, who has access to the details and that kind of thing. Do you kind of work through support in that way as well?
Yeah, and I think a lot of this comes down to understanding what the individual is experiencing, and timing is key with this. So sometimes what we will be doing is giving quite a lot of balance. So giving a lot of information to somebody about what they can do, but also they need to understand what the implications of that are and the risks associated with that are. It's like what you just said, and quite rightly you said safety, you know, stopping somebody's access in terms of a joint, you know, a second card holder user, sorry. Absolutely, that controls that. But as you said about safety, that's an immediate alert to a perpetrator who might be using that line of credit. And it's the same when we get asked questions such as somebody that has a joint award for a benefit. There are ways to split joint awards in these circumstances, but there are risks involved as well with that. So I think it's hugely around that balance. The other thing as well is, of course, is, you know, what can people do after they may have escaped from those relationships, and there are different things that might be easier once that's happened. A lot of people might want to do a lot of things very quickly, but actually this is why it's so important to be working with a domestic abuse charity, because one of the key concerns in these scenarios is having the right plan. What are the next steps in the escape plan if that's what's happening? Because if those resources and that framework isn't set up, then that can be even more risky. So having that plan is really essential. So there's lots of things that can be done, such as you know, password protecting your credit files, so that can prevent those forms of applications happening in the future, sorry. And that's a very simple thing to do through notice of correction and almost looking at safeguarding and future proofing in the long term. So there's very easy ways to do that. And through us, we'll educate clients on how to do that and when maybe to do that, weighing up those risk levels. And that's where every single person will be very different. Technology can be a very useful thing. It can be quite a dangerous thing in certain circumstances as well, but can be very useful. And one of the things you talked about earlier was the credit referencing and use of that. One thing that we will do at PayPlan is ask an individual if they'd like us to pull a free credit report for them, because maybe they don't have access to be able to do that themselves. They don't have the technology to do it. But also that can help to understand debts that they might not be familiar with as well. And so we do use technology such as that to really help somebody through that process for free.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, which is, particularly around getting the credit report information as well, which, for someone who, we've talked about these scenarios now where someone might have fled the family home or wherever they live with their, ex-partner or abusive ex-partner, gone somewhere new, and then the process of getting hold of your financial information like a credit report, so on, is might be overwhelming. So I think it's really good to point that out. And also we do work as well, if you're in temporary accommodation and so on, with Citizens Advice to help people get hold of their credit reports as well. But I think actually in this point, Anthony, you really highlighted something important to me, which is we deal a lot with the kind of the back end of the issues that people face financially. But when you discussed about the escape plan, I think what we sometimes forget is actually what a kind of traumatizing situation it is from the very beginning through to figuring out how you're going to do certain things along the way and what that means. So I think they're really important points. And so I can't really kind of recommend more. If you're in that scenario, PayPlan is a wonderful option, or even if you're going through Refuge, to get far more support in terms of the wider domestic abuse issues as well. But let me quickly pick off before we round off just a couple of points, because you talked about password protecting your report. It's great. Yes, you can do that. You can put a password on there. It's free to do, and you have to do it with all 3 credit reference agencies, and it stops applications being made in the future in your name, because the lender should ask for this password, and then it should be something only you should know. And then also, I think we talked about in our first video, working with surviving economic abuse, and there's some wonderful advice. I would just say go to their website. There's a section on there about protecting your credit report. So lots of information about when you're financially linked, but also a bit about kind of digitally protecting yourself, where you might have joint accounts. You might not know what to do with your online banking, or when to notify lenders, when to update addresses. All really important issues if you're staying safe or trying to stay safe as well. So Anthony, I'm going to kind of wrap this one up, because I think we've covered a lot of support that people can get. I'll hand over to you if there's anything you want to just add in at the end, of course, put you on the spot. But I just want to say thanks for joining us. We've done 2 excellent videos, I think, setting the scene for what economic and financial abuse is, and now talking through some of the support that they can get through PayPlan or through Refuge and PayPlan or local charities as well. So you're doing wonderful work, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. And I guess just the thing I want to say is, whenever somebody's ready, we're here to help. And whether they do come to us directly, we can always put them in touch with a domestic abuse charity as well. So if they're not interacting with that service, we can make sure that they're referred through. So either way you come, we're here to help, either over the phone or online.